people. So here we go. So I read all of your homework. If you submitted it late, I'll probably get to it late because there's nothing that really tells me that you've now submitted something. I tend to do it like the first 2 days after it's due. I go through and grade everything. But if you're a little bit late, then I won't know about it for a while. So sometimes you can email me through Canvas and tell me, hey, can you grade my thing or read it, or if you have a question. Okay, so my little rhyme for the day is it's terrific to be specific. And that's what we kind of got to. Some of you were writing, and I know it's free writing, so it didn't count for a grade or anything like that. But when you are writing for academic purposes, you're going to hear me going on and on about how you've got to be specific. So I'm just going to show you, this is an interesting thought someone had about stereotypes. And this student said, whenever I tell someone that I'm from Manhattan Beach, they automatically assume that I'm a rich, snobby kid with everything handed to them. I do not find that accurate since I had to work hard for everything and anything I wanted. And that's a specific one. So some of you kind of waxed philosophical about stereotyping and we shouldn't do it and the world would be a better place, but you didn't actually light upon an actual stereotype. So that's fine for free writing. You can do whatever you want. But just for moving forward, whenever you're going to discuss a thing, we're going to want to see concrete examples. Because when you create a concrete example, it forces you to make sure that your logic is sound, that you are making a point that can be supported by evidence. Okay. I say that it's like a scaffolding of reasoning. It's like you're building a ladder and you've got examples that apply and they're tightly bound, and we're going to get to the top of the ladder with you only if each rung is sequentially organized well. So that's just kind of that's me being philosophical. So these are some examples that are from your work that were too general. I made a little general, I put a little general there, to be compelling. So just FYI, if you ever get a note from me and it says it's a little general, that's what I'm not going to put the little general on there, but what I mean to say is you're going to have to narrow and focus in on an actual example or an idea that's specific and concrete. So here we have this person is writing, they say, I believe that Adichie, we're talking about danger of a single story, Adichie's description of a single story strongly resonates with what is happening today. We are constantly seeing it happen. Okay, now there's it, we don't know what it is, with news and social media. What's on the news? What is the social media? If we don't do our own research about what? And just go off on that information, what are you talking about? We will only be capable of forming a single story that can lean to one side. So that is, you know, kind of the overarching idea that Adichie has, but there's nothing in there that's actually concrete. So we don't get anywhere. We just go, yeah, you know, if you only see one side and then you'll, you know, so it's sort of flip-flop nowhere. The media is highlighting the wrong things and screwing the public's opinion. And that was just I'm just cutting and pasting from your work. What is the media highlighting? Are you sure you want to say it's the wrong thing or what's going on there? So again, we're going to need more info. And here we have another one. Adichie's idea reflects the fact that even in current culture, people are constantly stereotyping and making false assumptions about different cultures, races, religions. Like what? Give us something. What are we talking about? Again, it sounds like it might be specific when you say cultures, religions, and races, but not really because we don't really have any examples there. Adichie wants a world where everyone's treated equally and without culture being a constant factor in how people view others. And that's again, that's kind of we don't know what the logic of that exactly is. So now here's an example. Pay attention. Somebody who's doing it with specifics. And it's longer, but it didn't necessarily have to be, you know, 10 times longer. I'll give you a couple examples. When I think of how this is a student who did, you know, move from the general to the specific. She said, well, I think Adichie's idea of a single story is affecting the world right now. The first thing that comes to my mind is the Black Lives Matter movement. I see the movement as something that is meant to bring people together and improve conditions for all. And I had to tweak a couple of things because it was free writing, so it's a little patchy. The divide in our country is now the result of what Adichie suggests is a single story syndrome, even though there are many stories that people are hearing. One example that demonstrates How the single story can contaminate opinion is people coming to the conclusion that everyone who has joined the BLM movement is also the cause of looting and rioting. So you've got BLM, you've got looting and rioting, you've got people going to that assumption. So despite the fact that many people are peacefully protesting. So this person dipped into the example and then analyzed it a little bit. And you're going to always be asked to analyze your examples and apply them to the concept we're on, okay? And the concept we're on with Adichie is single story.
Stereotype.
Okay. And here's another one. This is a shorter one. Let's read this one. I think Adichie's, and you can look at this document. This is on the left side of your navigation. And these are just, this one, we have the general and now we have specific. I think Adichie's idea applies greatly to today's world. One prominent issue that I think plays into this idea is clickbait. Okay, now that was an interesting example. The idea of clickbait is to draw the viewer as much of the public, the viewers, as much of the public does not read further into the subject. Well, so this person came only halfway. This can be extremely harmful to many since a single headline can be considered a single story. It was a great start. I'll give the person that. Now I want to see you clicking on something. What does it say? Where did it go? And what is the story that you assume to be the true story based on that click? Okay. So anytime I'm saying something to you like, oh, it's too general, that's what I'm talking about. You've got to, once you try to apply an example, you'll see whether it makes sense. Sometimes you have to abandon ship. You got to go, well, that didn't work out. That's not the right example. That doesn't add up. You've got to keep everything pretty tightly logical. Again, I'm just doing this to kind of give you heads up for future writing, because free writing, it's no problem. You could kind of go in whatever direction. And then this is another one. I'll let you read these at your leisure, and this is on the document for the notes, but these are examples where people were much more specific in their description of what happened in the description or the free write for stereotyping. You know, this right here, there's a, let's see if this is actual, okay, we're gonna go to this. This is a punctuation final part, which I don't really think we're actually, you know what, I'm gonna save that for another time, because I did give you how to join sentences, and all I'm doing for that is the mistakes that people really do make. And it's sentence joining, and that's one, and you go through those slides and see if you can piece it together. And the other one is when you use words like when, if, because, even though, although. And you should be using words like that because they, you know, they alter and complexify the dynamics of your sentences. Anyway, so those punctuation matters will come more into effect when I'm actually grading your essays and whatnot. In fact, when I read your summaries, it'll come into effect, and I'll point out different punctuation things. You know, I almost hate to make a big deal about punctuation. It sounds so boring, but it does make a difference. You know, it's really distracting when things aren't punctuated right, or the sentences aren't joined correctly. The reader gets all off track. Okay, so let me see if there's any, I'm gonna stop sharing for 1 second. I'm gonna look in the chat. Nobody has any questions. Here's the other thing, just as an FYI, I grade your work usually on Thursdays and Fridays. So, and I have office hours tomorrow and today. So make sure you look at it and see if you have any questions. Okay. So make sure that we're going to go look at the assignments right now, and then, you know, get your questions ready. One person asked me this, and I forgot about this. On some of my documents, I have Google Documents. At the bottom of the document, you'll see a little extra assignment. You don't need to do that. Just do the assignment that's in Canvas as an assignment. If you go over to the document and there's other notes there, that's just because I like to keep different options in place. I like to save all my lessons for different classes. So just do the one that's on there. So, okay, so now I'm gonna share the screen and we're gonna look at the assignment. Uh-oh. Hold on 1 second. And I'm going to share the screen again. And this time we're going to go to the actual assignments. So hopefully you are using Canvas. This is their third week, so by now everybody's kind of gotten the bugs worked out. Everybody's got Google Docs. Some of you submit it in different ways, but I can get to it, so that's fine. And that's, if I can't, you get a message that says I can't access it, and that was only just a couple of people. Okay, so we're in week 3, and we're just gonna, some people don't realize that this is 2 things you have to do. You're gonna go to the summary guide. Now, you're gonna hate me because I'm gonna say a lot of things about summarizing. God, I hate myself when I say it. It sounds kind of boring, but summary is gonna be all of the academic writing techniques that you need, okay? So you're gonna have to absorb this part on summary like your life depends on it, okay? Because not only are you gonna accurately represent the content of the thing that you're reading, you have to use the academic style of writing. You've got to integrate quotes. You've got to use words like argues, describes, explains. You've got to systematically go through the text without staying too long on one little detail, but more or less getting all of the major points. Every summary looks a little different because it's writing, it's not math. So you can weigh in. The only thing you can't do is leave out something huge or misrepresent by interpreting, or, and this is a common thing, people, sometimes when you're writing a summary, you'll make the mistake of putting your opinion within it. So summary is only to get the reader up to speed with what the discussion is about. And it's going to be about this text, this is what's in the text, so that everybody's ready to talk about it. You're sort of setting up the shop. So this is a Google Slides again. And this one I have a little audio, and I'm going to ask you to go through it. I'm just going to click on them and say a couple things about it, but I want you to do this on your own time because this tells you all of the key tips, okay? Number 1, first time you introduce a text, and we're just going to call any of these talks or articles, anything, it's a text, you use the author's first and last name and a reference to their credentials. You'd say, Director of Neurobiology at Stanford University, Dr. So-and-so, writes in his article such and such. Then you put the title of the text in quotation marks. It's a bit of a mouthful, but all of that has to be done before any discussion of the text. You can't start grabbing ideas or direct quotes unless you've already introduced it. Author's first and last name initially, their credentials, and the title of the work you're discussing. Okay, so then we'll look and see what that looks like. Here we go. And you have this, you're going to be reading this article. What does a basic MLA, don't be scared of the words or the letters, just Modern Language Association wants you to do it like this. In the article, the flight from conversation, see it is in quotation marks, MIT professor, here's the credentials, Sherry Turkle, it's her first and her last name, presents her ideas about, okay? And then here is another one, I've got to shrink that. Harvard psychology professor Sean Acker, so there's this credentials, you can do it all different ways, you can kind of mess around with the sentences, entertains as he presents his ideas about maximizing happiness and performance in his TED Talk, then it's in quotes, okay? So this next, this is a robust summary of the flight from conversation. So you will be reading that, but I just want you to read it over. Whoa, I'm getting feedback. So that you can see how the quotes are integrated and words like observes, she presents, she does not talk about, okay? So I want you to get that right off the bat. We're not going to use the language of speaking. Even if the person or the thing that you're reading has the language of speaking, when you write about it in an MLA style, you're going to use the language of writing. So we're going to have her present, and you'll see, if you say says or thinks or talks about, that's a very general way to, and it's very conversational. When you use words like presents or complains or argues or suggests or entertains, or there's all kinds of words you can use, but they're more precise than says or talks about. So we're going to steer clear of those. Turkle observes that, and then you'll see the quotations are integrated. So although this looks like a little, kind of a packed slide, it's just one little slide, but you can get massive amount of information on how to do academic writing by observing this technique that's going on right here and imitating it and following the conventions that you see in this slide. So I boiled it down to a couple of slides. So you'll see there's different quotes throughout, and they are integrated throughout the text. And this one will make more sense to you when you've read The Flight from Conversation, but you'll notice that if you read it and you haven't read this article, you'll kind of know what it's about. Okay? And elements of summary are going to appear throughout your essays as you discuss different specifics in the text. Okay, so this is the basic organization that I'm going to ask you to do, which is you're going to do an introduction in your essays, and then you're going to, and that's fun, and you're going to give an example, you're going to draw the reader in, and then the next paragraph is going to be summary. Now, it can be kind of big or kind of medium sized, but it has to be enough to get the reader up to speed, okay? But that doesn't mean you're done summarizing, because when you go into a point that an author or a speaker has made, you've got to orient, again, the reader to exactly what they were saying or what they were describing at that point. So there's little elements of summary throughout your essay because you'll be integrating the text. You're never going to lose sight of the text when you're in these discussions, okay? So these are some things that you don't do because you're about to write a summary, okay? So don't use says or talks about. Don't use you constructions. When you say you go to the store, or you stereotype, or when you go out, or just try to get you out of the equation. Again, even if the speaker is using you, and sometimes in a talk that makes more sense, the language of your writing about it is still going to avoid you constructions, okay? Some students ask, they always say, can I use I? Yes, you can use I. Can I use you? Not so much, okay? This is all things you can't do. Don't quote or paraphrase from the text before you introduce it. Sometimes people will bring things in their introduction, but they haven't yet introduced the text, and it doesn't quite make sense. Do not refer to the author by their first name. I said before that when you first introduce them, the text, you're going to do the first and the last name of the author. Thereafter, once you've done that, it's only their last name, okay? So that's just a rule. So you're getting all the rules. This is a lot of info, but if you can grasp a hold of this, and some of you have had experience with this, maybe some of you not, but it's all in here, okay? Do not insert your opinion or interpretation of the text in the summary. So I'm not saying your opinion, we're getting to that. And your opinion's gonna be not just what you came in thinking, but how you base it on some evidence. You're gonna have to construct a persuasive point of view based on your own experience or your own ideas or another text or some other angle that you can, plump up the discussion. Do not overgeneralize by continuously repeating the main idea of a text, never getting to specifics. And as we said in the beginning, it's terrific to be specific. So if you ever see me saying this is general, it means that there wasn't enough detail or concrete, something we could see or think about in any sort of meaningful way. So you've got to do that. And don't plagiarize, okay? And plagiarizing is when you use the language in the text too closely to exactly what's there, and you don't put quotes around it, and you are kind of, and it's in the syllabus, the whole thing about plagiarizing, and then it seems as if you're presenting it as your own words when it's not. Okay, so here's another tip. These are some things you should do. Systematically use the author's last name. And when you read the example, you'll see, like, I'm not going to give you an exact formula, but maybe every third sentence, the author's name comes up again. You don't construct the same rhythm of sentence every time. You'll see that it varies, but you can't lose sight of the author, because if you go about 4 sentences down and you're still describing what, and Adichie, is discussing her college roommate, and then you keep going in your story without saying Adichie, If you're discussing an idea that she had, it becomes unclear whether it's your idea, the writer, the student, you, or Adichie, the speaker. So there is a way, and you just have to kind of read it back over, which brings me to my other point. You should always be revising because it never comes out right the first time. So you got to go back and make sure, have I kept the author in there? Am I using the last name? Did I put the title in quotes? Am I spending, one student, I read one, somebody did it, and good on her, she already did it, but she forgot to do the first part of this assignment, which is to watch this, do this Google Slides, and then write down one of the tips. I just want you to write down one tip that maybe you didn't know before, and in the act of writing that, it'll get more into your head. Okay, so that's the first part of the assignment. Second part of this section of the assignment is to write a summary of the danger of a single story. And there's an example. I'm going to get out of this. I'm going to go back to the assignment. And so there's the slides. You're going to answer the questions, which you give us two things, two tips that you find useful. That's the first part. So at the top of your entry, whatever, Google Doc or however you want to do it, I should see two. You're just going to give me back two of the tips on how you write summary or how you write MLA is really what it is. So if you can just get over this hurdle, you'll be in really good shape. And then you're going to write a 250 or so word summary. And here I'm telling you that a text, as you can see by the way I'm talking, we refer to it as a text. And this is me yammering on in much the same way. What is a summary? Why do we do it? Why do you cite your sources? And in this day and age, you know, with things coming at us from every internet angle in the world, you know, the topic of what is the source and how is it verifiable becomes even more important in these crazy times. All right, so you can watch that if you want to get more of a sense. So there's two things in this small assignment. So, and this is all describing what has to be done, the first and last name. Again, I'm repeating these tips for you so that they're all here for you. And if you should make a mistake or forget one of these strategies, I'm going to refer you back to this assignment or back to those slides. Okay, and here we have a summary. Now this is my fancy schmancy summary, I guess, because I can't help myself. And yours will look different. So I'm just going to read it to you so you can kind of hear the language of it. And I'll talk you through what these strategies are as they appear here. An analysis of the often overlooked complexities of stereotyping is offered in Nigerian writer Chimichanda Ngozi Adichie's TED Talk. You have to do the whole name, The Danger of a Single Story. And, you know, I was able to create the sentence that says the often overlooked complexities because I had a long time to think about what was in that talk. And I've read a lot of student essays about it and I've written about it a little bit. So that is really what's going on. I mean, stereotyping, typically we say, oh, you shouldn't do it. Well, it seems to be something we can't help ourselves. In her talk, she describes her introduction to and love of British literature as a child, and now, because books for her always told stories of other lands, she began to believe that books, and then here's an integrated quote, books by their very nature had to have foreigners in them and had to be about things with which I could not personally identify. So you need to have the text right next to you, maybe on a separate screen, so that you can integrate quotes in a meaningful way that help illuminate what the content and what the style of the text is. Adichie goes on. So you see this word, this phrase goes on. That's a way that you can move through sort of the sequence of the text. To investigate her awakening understanding of stereotypes, as she realizes in retrospect she had unwittingly subscribed to a fixed idea of the family's houseboy, Fide, as poor and only that. It is to her surprise at learning Fide's brother had created a beautiful basket that reveals the limiting stereotype of poverty she held. A trip to Mexico yields a similar feeling of surprise, revealing how Adichie, see her name comes in again, had inadvertently held stereotypes about Mexicans. The tables are turned as she remembers her college roommates asking her if she had ever seen a stove before and asking to hear her tribal music. She reflects on the idea that stereotypes are not so much wrong, but incomplete. And that's a very important quote. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you use that, and you probably should somewhere in there. She believes it is impossible to engage with a place or person without engaging with all the stories of a place or person. Okay, so there's a version of a summary. It's not perfect, but it's gets the job done. All right, and it holds all of those strategies that I'm telling you. You got to do it. Now's the time. The rubber's going to meet the road here. You're going to have to first name, last name of the author or the speaker, title in quotes, maybe their credentials, and then sort of a marching through the main ideas, not getting stuck. I read one and I was a little bit stuck on the houseboy, and it wasn't, what happened was the person wrote the summary, and in order to explain all that business about the houseboy, they used maybe 5 or 6 sentences, and that's too much time on that one incident, which, if you think that through, it suggests something other than what the text is primarily about. That's just kind of one little example that she gives. So, and that's just a matter of rewriting, because you can shrink it down to make it a little bit more succinct. All right, so more or less you want to get the main idea. So you read one, you go, okay, and then you try one and you've got the text next to you, okay? And there's the rubric. So you can get 10 points doing it almost completely correct. I'm going to be, I grade these things very easily because I want you to get in there and try. But if you make a big mistake, like if the thing is riddled with your opinion, that tells me that you're not really reading the instructions for the assignment. And then, you know, I'm going to have to be kind of a stickler and say, you know, you need to really read the assignment and understand it just a little bit better. Okay, so the next, we're going to go to the next assignment. So the first assignment for this week is actually 2. I want you to write down 1 tip or 2 tips from the Google Slides, okay? Just so that it can stick in your head better, okay? 2 things that you always do in a summary or MLA writing, okay? And then the next one, okay, so then we're going to, oh, there you go. Then you have something a little less rigorous and it's a little more fun. We're going to this is a discussion, so you're going to have to respond to a classmate. And this is a link to a TED Talk, and it's about fear, reprogramming your brain to overcome fear. And you're going to free write, and that could be fun and interesting, and it's a discussion. So you're going to read what someone else has written, and then you're going to respond. Oh, somebody already got on it. So this is mine, Veronica. Very good. So that one you shouldn't have any. There's no. I'm giving you a rigorous assignment where you're going to summarize, and you've got to use those MLA techniques, and then you can kind of exhale and just write what you want about fear. And that's all part of the writing process. There's fun and loose and brainstorm and say whatever you want. And then you know, there's part of it where you do have to learn a technique, a skill. It's like learning to play the scales, which just helps you become a better thinker really in the end. Okay, so those are the 2 assignments for this week. And then as we go, the next thing that we're going to tackle is another rigorous activity. You've got summary, which incorporates all those MLA academic writing techniques, which is what we're here for in a lot of ways. We're here to think, and we're here to learn to put that thinking through the academic lens, which it's not for nothing that we do it. It tends to make thinking more precise, and it holds you kind of accountable for the logic within your own mind. You know, it's got to add up. And that is really a process of writing, pre-writing, writing stuff before, taking notes, writing it once, revising it. It goes around and around. It's a really fluid process. So make sure that you reread what you've written so that you can make it better every time. I sure do that all the time. In fact, I was reading that summary that I just did for you, and I was like, I could have changed that. That should have gone there. You know, it goes on with professional writers all the time. So you're always revising to make it better. And you'd be surprised how helpful it is to read your own work out loud. So I always advise students to do that. And if we were in person, we would be doing that in class. So that's another helpful tip for you to remember is read your paragraph out loud, see how it sounded. So let me just, while I've got the screen going, I do want you to, let me just check the modules. Remember, if you are saying, now what is this, how does this academic writing look? There's here about paragraphs, strategies, and examples. So this is a module. If you want to get more of a feel of different types, example of a summary of danger. This is a different kind of a paragraph. Introduction and summary, to something that we'll read shortly. And you may have already read it because I sent you the reading list, The Flight from Conversation. And as you can see, if you peruse this little list, there's summary and then there's single point analysis, and single point analysis paragraphs are the fun ones. That's where you get to state your opinion, where you extract one idea and then you kind of go to town with something that you apply some new thinking to it, some new example, or you argue with it, or you find another way of looking at it, or of bolstering this writer's idea. Now, largely, most often it's some sort of form of agreement with a smaller point, and then you bring your own, something you've seen, something something from another text, something specific, some sort of evidence-based exploration and discussion that can further persuade the reader to be on board with your point of view. That's what we're doing. Okay, so just remember that in the modules, you have, of course, the chronological marching through and very detailed descriptions of what you're supposed to be doing in the assignments themselves. So really do read those. And then you have all the readings. There's lots of readings all listed in there. You can look them up. And then here, these are strategies and examples. Integrating quotes. If you're like, how do I integrate quotes? Well, look at that one. Even if you haven't read the text or seen the talk, you can surely follow it just by the writing. And that's a tip for all of you. People should be able to follow what you're discussing, whether or not they have read the text. In fact, that's your job when you're summarizing. Get the reader up to speed. Okay, so here we go. The slide is permission before I could hear the audio. Okay. Okay, so I'll work on that audio part. I don't know why that is, but for now, even if you can't no one can get the audio, that's, I can work on that, but it's mostly me saying the same stuff. Okay, so you can get the gist by the slides themselves. So hopefully that won't be too big of a problem. I'll try to fix that. I did, what I used a different program to put the audio in. So maybe I've got to publish it to the web or something. But for now, the slideshow, it's self-explanatory in what's on the slides. So we'll just go from there. Yeah, I want you to listen to this question. So the student writes in, she says, so we don't mention their last name in parentheses after the quote. And I'm going to say, no. And you know what we'll do? I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to show you that because it's a really common scenario. And believe me, it comes up. Oops, I'm going to go here. Let me just go to the notes again. I'm going to show you what the student is talking about. And I know that a lot of you, let me just see. So I'm going to say Adichie explains that stereotypes are not necessarily, let's say I'm writing a summary. I'm going to say no, I'm going to say not necessarily incorrect, but incomplete. Okay, so there's my quote. And that would be a quote like this. Now, I know that some of you then want to go like this. And now, I want you to think about that for a minute, because that is only necessary to put it those parentheses if it is unclear where the quote has come from. If you do it like this, then it's repetitive and unnecessary, okay? And we always want to do less is more, okay? And I much prefer that it is clear from your prose, your writing, where the quotes are coming from. Usually when you have this, in this type of writing we're going to do, because mostly will be centered on a text and it's going to be very clear what that text is, that is more helpful to use the parentheses when you've got so many quotes from so many different sources that we don't know where it came from, what, who. You know, and this is not going to be like that. It's got to be, in fact, it's a challenge to you to be crystal clear that this is about this text and this is the discussion. So if that is your habit, I mean, it's technically, this technically would be okay if you said, oh, if you said she, went she, and then you said Adichie. But I would say it would still seem somewhat absurd in the middle of a discussion where it was clearly about this one talk. Okay, so hopefully that explains that.
Thank you.
Oh, and then the thing about the readings, here, we'll share the screen one more time. The readings, I'm giving them to you. I sent you, oh wait, let me share. I'm going to go back to the modules. I'm going to look at the readings with you. 1 second. You know, on this, I would say the first modules, all you have to do is the assignments, okay? I also put the readings at the bottom in case you wanted to do another one, if you wanted to read ahead, because some of the examples are based on them. You're going to, look, if you look at the assignments, okay, we're going to do the fear, then we're going to do the power of introverts, then we're going to do the happy secret to better work, and then we're going to do the flight from conversation, and then we're going to do, does the internet make you dumber? We're marching along and we're going to be reading a lot of things. And I just put them there for you so you would have access to them no matter what, no matter when. That's the readings for the final. Oopsie, where did I put them? Oh, I shrunk them down. So that's just like a storage place for you. And you can always access them if you know, for some reason. The assignments, by the way, are available to you usually a week before and a week after they're due. So some people get ahead a little bit. And then if you, let's say you didn't hand something in and then you couldn't access the assignment, the reading is there for you. So these are like doubling up. And in this list, there's things that we won't have an assignment about, but you may want to use when it comes time to do the research paper. All of these readings are going to be related tangentially and, you know, obviously in some ways, and you'll be kind of getting them together. The way that this is designed is that, so we're loosening up, we're writing about ideas. I'm doing a little bit of punctuation on the side, and now we've gotten to the ML, we got the internet, hopefully got Canvas set up. Now we're doing MLA style, we're doing summary, and we're gonna start practicing those types of paragraphs. And then you're gonna do single point analysis, and we're gonna practice those, and I'm gonna give you feedback on those smaller ones. And some of those paragraphs you might well be able to use in your essays if they're really well done, and you go, oh, I'm gonna write about that for my first essay. In your first essay, you'll pick one of the readings that we've read up to this point, and you'll write an entire essay about it. And, you know, more to follow on that, but it won't be any sort of surprise. It will be an introduction and then a summary, and then you're going to analyze different points. It's pretty straightforward. So it's designed so that you can build those skills if you just follow along and do the assignments. So the readings, hopefully that answers your questions. They're just housed here in case you should want to access a couple of different ones. Like we didn't do this one, surviving isolation. Later in the semester, you might say, well, I'm going to write about, you know, lockdown and COVID and the effects of isolation on the psyche or something like that. And then you, oh, I wonder what that is, you know. And does the internet make you smarter? Does it make you dumber? Some will do together, and those are really the only ones you have to do. And you'll be fine if you just do what I say. So, and then that's all in just the assignments as we march along. Okay, let me see. So you are not supposed to be reading them all, but you can read you will be reading probably 3/4 of them, and it goes in order of the assignments. Okay, do you have any other questions? So let me just say one more thing, and then we can go on our way unless you want to ask more questions. Make sure that you try to do this assignment like today or tomorrow so that I can see if you have a question. Like the first person turned it in, she didn't answer that. I just want you to write down 2 of those tips about MLA summary. And that is just me being a teacher, trying to make sure that you understand repeated practice. Like you think about it, you look at it, you write it down. the more times you go through that process, the more likely it is to stick in your brain. Okay. So I'm just trying to get you to repeat it to yourself so that you will understand it and be able to use it and not forget what these techniques are. Okay.
And for those tips, do you want us to just like write it like above, like on the document, just like above it?
Yes.
Okay.
Just just write down 2 tips, however you want to do it. And that should do it. I just want you to get it in your mind. Like if you were used to doing the parenthetical expressions, like putting the author's last name, I'm not going to do that. I don't think that's in the tips, although it's a very common thing that students want to do, but hopefully you learn something right now is you never lose your common sense. Like maybe when I was explaining that, you're like, well, wait a minute. Yeah. If it already says the author's name and it's crystal clear where it's from, why would I then, there's always a reason. Academic writing isn't just nonsense. Sometimes I guess it is, but most of the time it's based on logic and reason. So it needs to sort of add up. So that is the story. All right, so I will work on the audio for the slideshow. I just want you to write the 2 tips and then write your summary. And in the summary, I'll try to give you some feedback, okay? And like I said, there's a part 2 to punctuation, and we'll get to that as we go. But the first part of punctuation, sentence joining, there's probably, I don't know, almost maybe a third of all my students this semester, it's a problem. So, and I know that it's something you have to decide that you're going to learn. It's hard to do. And it's not hard to listen to me talk about it. It's hard to look at your own writing and go, oh, I see. It takes a lot of effort, and you've got to really, and sometimes you got to use remember, one more screen share. Let's see. I just remember that here you have the writing center. Oh, it's telling that. So Emily, can you see my screen?
I can. Yeah.
That's the only one I can see. All right. She's the brave one. Nobody's showing their face. All right. So remember, see this right here? Writing center tutoring. If you're one of the people who's like, every time I'm doing it, I'm going, check punctuation. Or if you see my little comments, I'm writing on your Google Doc. Sometimes I'm making a comment on the assignment itself. So make sure you're accessing the comments, because I'm not going to comment on every sentence, of course, but every so often, if I find like there's a little system that might be a little askew and I want to call it to your attention, I'll point that out so that, moving forward, you can say, oh, you're not joining sentences, you're going to have to check this one. And then that might cause you to, really think about it and move forward and straighten that little issue out. So anyway, but here is, if usually it's sentence level errors are really a problem, then you're going to go to the writing center. So boom, boom, you just click on that. I set it up so that it's in the left-hand column there. And then you can make an appointment and they're going to give you all the instructions. So it used to be you could go to the library and just drop in and they would go over, say, a paragraph or 2 with you. And again, they don't rewrite your work, but they kind of look to find the systems, and usually patterns of error or patterns of trouble, so that you can really understand what the issues are. Okay, so that is our Labor Day scenario. And so just be ready. It's going to get a little bit more rigorous as we go. Like I said, we're building up a head of steam, and all of these skills that you're using, you have to do discussions and free writing just to make sure your brain stays fluid and thinking about ideas, and it's a little more fun. But then we also have to work on the academic side, where it's pretty technical, and you do have to do it in a certain way. And it's like anything. It's like once you are familiar, it isn't as painful. All right, so just take your time and try to get that summary right, and don't spend too much time on any one point, but try to make sure the best way to do this well is to really read the text, listen to the talk 2-3 times. The more you understand it, the better you'll be able to get it back out in your own words. It's a blend of paraphrase and direct quotation. All right, and then you'll kind of get the groove of argues, presents, goes on. illuminates. I mean, there's all kinds of words you can use other than talks about and says. All right. So for now, we're just focused on summary, and that's going to be that. All right. Okay, so I'm going to go, I'll be here for the next hour. So if you want to send me an email, I'll check in about a half an hour. And in the meantime, I'll try to get the audio going for the permissions for the audio for the slideshow. Okay.
Thank you.
Everybody good? Okay. All right. All right, everybody, have a good one. And
Thank you.
send me a question if you have it. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.